Welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. Good morning again. Immigration, tariffs, foreign policy. Donald Trump made himself very clear that things were going to change from day one on his presidency. Pundits wonder about the program of the second term. But before we begin, let's focus on the inauguration ceremony itself. Who's invited and who's not? How revelatory is it? What will the world look like on 21st of January 2025? To delve onto today's inauguration, we're joined by Professor Tomasz Płudowski, Associate Professor from the University of Economics and Human Sciences in Warsaw. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you, Professor. So let me start by a quotation from Donald Trump. Starting tomorrow, I will act with historic speed and strength and fix every single crisis facing our country. That sounds optimistic.
Before it even appears.
Before it even appears.
Well, obviously, American speeches or inaugural speeches are very optimistic, very upbeat, and presidents always promise more than they can deliver. And it's actually, I mean, some people like this aspect of American culture, some don't. This optimism that you can start, you can always, like they always, I mean, this relates to Americans' private lives or individuals' private lives and social and political problems. We more or less face the same problems repeatedly, and it definitely applies to societies and presidents and politicians. And we, like every 4 years in the US, the new president or the same president in his second term, he promises a new beginning, right? And a new beginning is a very American motive. Mm-hmm. This hope for something new, to restart. And I think a lot of people think that it's naive because the problems more or less remain the same. For example, this wall wasn't built to a large extent. It certainly wasn't built by Donald Trump. More of it was built by Barack Obama, but still it hasn't been finished. Mm-hmm. So now they have a new solution. But I don't know that it's realistic to actually remove all those illegal immigrants from the United States.
The question is, does it have to be? Perhaps it's just this accountability doesn't count so much. Mm-hmm. Perhaps it's just about the faith, the hope, mm-hmm. the dream, mm-hmm. Something to hold on.
Yes, definitely. It's again, it's more symbolic, it's more rhetorical. It's again comes back to this myth. I mean, cultures use a lot of myths, and the new beginning is a typically American myth of starting from scratch or starting anew, or at least renewing your hope. I mean, exactly. Getting married, buying new houses, moving, changing jobs, mm-hmm. A new opening in relations between countries, in bilateral relations.
Donald Trump comes as a savior, long-awaited savior. But coming back to the inauguration itself, what does the composition of Trump's guest list mm-hmm. suggest about the political direction of this administration? I mean, those names are really revelatory. Ursula von der Leyen, excluded, not invited. But Eric Zemmour, Tino Chrupalla, Santiago Abascal, invited. Mm-hmm. So what direction is this administration taking?
Yes, I'm more of an Americanist than a European studies person, but there's definitely differences. We discussed this before, that Mateusz Morawiecki is invited and Andrzej Duda is not invited. I'm not into reading too much into this, but obviously these are certain signs, but then relations between the same bilateral relations or interpersonal relations between the same two politicians can change. So you can during the same like 4-year term. What I think we can expect is that Trump and Musk are going to welcome more right-wing politicians, European politicians. They are more likely to cooperate with politicians from European Union more radical or more right-wing politicians like Meloni, for example.
Meloni, yes, but Jourdan Bardella or Marine Le Pen are not invited. Again, that tells us a lot.
Yes, that they are considered much more radical than Meloni. I expect Trump. I mean, he's unpredictable. He's a wild card. He's very unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do, and that's his strength. So I think it helps him a lot that people don't know his enemies or even friends or allies or just friendly or neutral onlookers or bylookers. They look at him and they don't know what to expect. So that gives him a lot of strength. And I think, I don't know, in many areas, I really don't know. He says one thing in the election, and then he doesn't really deliver, or he delivers only rhetorically or symbolically. For example, making America great again. That was actually Ronald Reagan's slogan from 1980 or 84. It's actually, let's make America great again, and he just cut the let's off. But he didn't really make America that much greater in the first term, and now he promises to make America great again. Well, if you read it literally, it's not really again because he didn't make it
Finally,
great.
let's finally make America great.
Eventually,
greater.
Someday. So I mean, politicians use rhetoric all the time. But I mean, I'm really against. I mean, the longer I study political science or American studies or communication, rhetoric, and so on, much more than, say, French studies or European Union studies, I see that politicians mostly resort to rhetoric and symbolic
well, but
acts.
symbolic, as far as symbols are concerned, Donald Trump inviting Xi Jinping, despite logistical problems that the latter may face to attend, and also a certain bold direction against China in this rivalry between the United States and China. I mean, that is also telling, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I think he's mostly focused on China, on Russia to a lesser extent, and on bilateral relations with mostly right-wing politicians from Europe. I think he's going to be quite aggressive towards China. But this gesture shows that he wants to show his friendly face to China. But I don't think he's going to refrain from imposing tariffs. I think he's serious about that. That's one of the few things that he actually did and accomplished in the first term, being very decided about tariffs. But I don't think he achieved his goal here. That American jobs that were outsourced since the 80s, did not really come back to the U.S. They came back at first to a certain extent, but then they were, in crisis. All those changes were basically erased.
So what can we expect from tomorrow? From tomorrow on, I mean, the president is going to start by signing a dozen of presidential decrees, the so-called executive orders to the federal administration. Their effect is immediate. So, which decisions should we expect as first?
Yes, decrees are an important weapon or tool of American presidents because they are very effective. And presidents, when they don't have a majority in Congress or their party does not have a majority in Congress, it helps them to be quick. I mean, we remember even like Wałęsa in the 90s talking about decrees and wanting to introduce quick changes through decrees. So it is.
Well, Steve Bannon called them days of thunder.
Yes.
So immediate decrees.
Yes, immediate decrees. So it doesn't matter whether he has majority or he doesn't have majority, but then they are reversible. So they are not as solid as, say, changes in the Constitution which require 2/3 or acts, passed through Congress. So I think he's going to act on the issues of immigration. Although I'm not certain, I don't believe that he's going to expel 10 million illegal immigrants. I think he's going to help all those supporters of his that invaded the capital on the 6th of January in 2021. I think those two areas are important to his supporters, to his hardcore supporters. But other than that, it's going to be a long list, but then when you look at presidents, they introduce changes. Some of them are symbolic, like cultural changes. Like Biden was very supportive of, I don't know, minority rights, LGBT rights, you know, all those issues of bathrooms and, you know, support for minority rights. That can be easily erased. I mean, a lot of them were introduced through decrees, and they can be easily called back. A lot of them are related to the army as well, and sometimes on the verge of the two worlds that according to some, don't seem to go together, like minority rights and the military.
Well, TikTok probably will be the beneficiary, right, of those decrees. By the time the sun sets tomorrow evening, the invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and an illegal border trespassers will, in some form or another, be on their way back home, said Donald Trump. So you don't believe that some illegal migrants will be sent back? But the frontier will be sealed.
I believe something will be done. Very often a symbolic gesture is important, and it shows you know, the direction that you want to go in. But I don't believe that it will be successful. I don't believe that it's possible to entirely seal the border. And I think that the US, like most countries, including Poland, most Western countries, need actually those immigrants. The point is to make immigration legal, not illegal, and control this process. We basically are starting to have the same problem as the US. You see this process, those immigration processes around the world, everywhere. We're joining the kind of the rich world, and we're starting to have the same problems. We're starting to be a location where immigrants want to come.
Thank you very much, Professor Tomasz Płudowski, Associate Professor at the University of Economics and Human Sciences in Warsaw, was our guest today. Thank you so much. And let me just finish with a quotation again. "We stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in America," says so Donald Trump.
Again.
Thank you so much. And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more.